So firstly, I wanted to ask Brett, what does inclusivity mean to you?
Inclusivity means a lot of things, but for the deaf community as a deaf individual, it's being able to belong. We have a vibrant community. It's ensuring that we have a good life, and that may be through accessing services to provide that. And as a community, we do have a unique culture and identity. We shared history and language. But what is most important with inclusivity is that sense of belonging. Uh, Wanting to understand, want the mainstream community to understand that the deaf community is there not to exclude us, to include us as part of the wider society. And I spoke to services, whether it's government or private or through a non-for-profit. We're here to ensure that deaf people get access to the various services they need. Access does equal inclusion, but it it's also access that's not happening in the community that we want to highlight.
Can you talk us through some of those areas that you mean?
So when we speak to access, I'm talking to the sign language using community. We communicate through our hands. In most part, we have access to interpreters that you would have seen during press conferences, natural disasters, especially in far north Queensland, where you experience a lot more natural disasters than the rest of the state. I've noticed the mainstream community is starting to associate interpreters with bad news, and the deaf community to an extent as well. If they see an interpreter on TV, they'll have to stop and watch because it's bad news. And we're not celebrating the good stuff as a community. Like the announcement of the 2032 Olympic Games, we didn't provide an interpreter for that announcement, and things across the Australian landscape where it's just as important for as a community to be aware of than just in events of disaster. And so having access and inclusion across good and bad. So again, to reiterate, having inclusion as all part of everyday life and not just during disasters. The International Day of Disability is a chance to showcase what inclusion looks like and to include the deaf community into your program on Wednesday. And it's a great outcome for our community to share the good news and access to the good news. And so providing that access ensures a good life for anyone that receives that access.
I think sharing good news stories is really important. You know, we need to know certain stories, but sometimes there needs to be some goodness in there. What sort of stories would you like to see celebrated on days like International Day of People with Disability or every day?
It's an interesting question and not an easy question to answer. For me personally, at a personal level, the everyday, when I go do my groceries, go out for dinner, the cashiers themselves, just being able to sign basic signs such as thank you. It's a defining moment that where I feel belonging, I feel engaged to my community and part of society. For people with disability and people with deafness, there's a lot of exclusion in day-to-day life, and we're an afterthought and we're forgotten about, and they don't consider the different ways to provide access. And as we've mentioned, the important announcements on TV or major sporting events, events of national pride. I've got two sons that are hearing, and I didn't have an opportunity to talk to their parent, to other parents during their sporting lives growing up and cheering on the sidelines. I didn't have an opportunity to have those incidental conversations because I didn't have access to interpreters at that time as they were growing up. And where we now, through the NDIS, are able to access interpreters for those things, that's starting to bring everyone on that journey of inclusion. And deaf people are more robust in understanding on how they can get access to certain aspects of life now more than they ever did before.
Do you have any questions
It's
you'd
not
like to
that
ask Brendan?
everyone
Yeah,
will, sorry,
Sorry.
just we're not expecting a level of fluency from everyone in terms of sign language, and not everyone has the time to learn sign language. But when you meet a deaf person or you see a deaf individual, just make that extra effort to say hello. Just a wave, using some gestures, being a bit more visual in your gestures. That's the easiest way to engage a deaf community member rather than being passive or completely ignoring that individual.
and how's the NDIS helping, for example, to enable deaf people to be able to communicate with their family members? For example, at family functions, I'd imagine having interpreters there would make it a lot easier for instances like that. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. That is correct. And I would agree with that point. 95% of deaf people are born into hearing families, so they're the first deaf people in that family, and they don't have any models or role models to go against. And so communication is definitely difficult in that family environment. And we have tutoring and mentoring available, but deaf people with NDIS plans, like myself, are now able to utilize that plan to access family events and family functions. Recently, we had a family meeting with my aging parents to talk about their wishes as they're aging. And I had an opportunity to bring an interpreter to actually have a proper conversation with my siblings and family present. And that's really impactful, which I wasn't awarded that opportunity in the past, previous to NDIS. And so I now can access to the wider family, talk to my cousins and aunties and uncles, and it's a great thing. As I said before, with my two sons playing soccer and other sports growing up, now I can have interpreters available for those events and talk to the parents of their friends and engage in wider society and be actually part of their schooling and part of their sporting. So the NDIS is a game changer in that aspect, especially accessing interpreters. And that's probably predominantly the largest service a deaf person will access within the NDIS is interpreting services and to increase their social engagement.
And how does, for example, the organization that you belong to, Deaf Connect, how does it help to perhaps enable people to shift attitudes towards deaf people, to be more inclusive of them and not just perhaps make stereotypes?
As a service provider, we do provide a number of different services for our community, which does include interpreting. But one thing that happens time and time again, you spoke to community attitudes and perception and stereotypes and how to shift that attitude. We have deaf awareness training that is available as a service, and we provide that to many organisations and government where it's cultural and linguistic training to ensure they change their attitude of deafness and seeing deafness as a positive and a positive outcome to your environment if you include deaf people more in the workplace, etc. And so that's one way where we change community perception is through that deaf awareness training, where they meet a deaf trainer and be able to ask those questions. We also have social media campaigns during National Week of Deaf People and Auslan Day, days where we celebrate our community and the positive impacts including our community can bring to dispel some of those myths or biases. As I said before, 95% of deaf people are born into mainstream families, into hearing families. And a lot of these people work in workplaces with hearing colleagues. And so learning sign language, just a quick 8-week course, is so powerful in terms of engaging your colleague and including your colleague into the workforce. And so we are offering those opportunities as a service provider. We like to think that Deaf Connect is a conduit to support others and to link the deaf community into the mainstream and the mainstream to the deaf community through our sign language classes, through deaf awareness training, through our social media campaigns, or varying workshops we're able to provide for the community. There's a lot of activities that we can do. to try and shift that mindset and that attitude.
And at the moment, different parliaments, for example, the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland, are providing sign language interpretation so that their community can see what's going on. Does anything like that happen for the Australian deaf community?
I think we know the answer to that. I don't think we provide access to the equivalent that other governments do. But how many people actually watch Question Time at 2 o'clock when Parliament is in session every day? I know politics can be boring to some, but it is about providing that access. I think everyone has that right to access our politics, and it's great to see what all Northern Ireland and UK are doing to increase awareness and increase access. In saying that, if a deaf person wants to access government or access a government forum, they do provide interpreters. So we have seen various parliaments provide interpreters if it's requested, but it's not always front of mind. There are captions on TV as well. So there are other ways that deaf people can access parliament settings or politics. But it's a bit different if you want to access it live on the ground. There are countries that have sign language acts, which is embedded into the country law. Australia don't do that because we don't even recognise English. We don't have an English Act, even though it is the predominant language of Australia. The NDIS is a powerful tool that deaf people can use to access services through that choice and control more than what they've had in the past. And so we've seen a lot of countries that don't have the equivalent access like we do through NDIS. So we need to celebrate our own wins as well, and that we are ahead of the game as a lot of other Western countries in terms of what we can access to as disabled peoples. And so I do have to compliment and commend the Australian government in the advent of the NDIS and allowing that to happen.
What does the NDIS need to do better?
Actually, I have a meeting with the NDIA this week in Geelong, the day after this program. I hope they listen to this program on Wednesday. And how they can improve is providing a better way for the deaf community to access the scheme. Brendan may agree with me. Each disability has their own way of doing things. And so for the NDIA, they will call you to organise your interview. And if you fail on the third phone call, they'll kick you off the list. But you can't call a deaf person. And they're still calling deaf people. And so that's an automatic barrier that is set in place by that process. And so being flexible and agile and culturally appropriate and linguistically appropriate to the types of disabilities, that's how they can improve. I think the NDIS staff also need more awareness on deafness and some of the issues that we face. Some people equate deafness to having to learn how to speak or wear hearing aids and not acknowledging or celebrating sign language. And so more deaf awareness will help in that aspect. I think every disability will also probably say a similar improvement in terms of awareness.
Do you have a question, Brendan? Do you have any more questions?
No, I think I'm pretty well good, I think.
Brett, last time we spoke, following the program, somebody sent a text through saying they wished that Auslan was taught more in schools rather than languages other than English, or as part of that program. Would you be in support of that?
I do, yes. But it then leads to a further issue. I think Victoria, Western Australia have rolled out Auslan as a LOTE in school, as a LOTE option in schools. And they've contacted Deaf Connect to provide those tutors in those arrangements. But at the same time, as we roll out Auslan as a LOTE, Deaf Connect as a philosophy uses native users of Auslan to teach the language. We don't use people who have learnt Auslan through a course to teach the language. We use deaf people who grew up with the language to teach the language. And in schools, we see often teachers learn sign language, they do one class and then teach the LOTE, and that's not the appropriate situation. We want to see deaf people empowered to remain in control of their language and to teach the language in the appropriate way with that cultural and linguistic sensitivity. So yes, it would be great to have more Auslan classes in school as an option for LOTE. We just want to consider the workforce and who's actually teaching those classes. And I'm sure you understand that. Yeah, there's a shortage of teachers with Auslan skills to be able to teach Auslan. There's not enough interpreters. I know there's a lot of supply and demand issues in the workforce, but we still need to look at the workforce when we want to roll out Auslan as a LOTE. We do have one school in Brisbane here, Toowong State School, that has a bilingual, bicultural approach to education where they co-teach through sign language and English to all the students. And so through that school journey, the whole class learns both languages. And for deaf children, it is learning Auslan and reading English, of course. And I've entered the classroom and I couldn't tell you who the deaf child was because everyone is fluent in signing, and it's incredible to see. And I do have to celebrate that school. And so I support the learning of Auslan as a language, especially for children. It'd be great to see a more inclusive society starting at primary education.
And does
Yes, Brendan?
children learning Auslan at a
Are you just freezing up there a bit? Might get you to repeat
Do you
that
want to
question.
try to ask the question again?
Yeah, I just asked, does teaching Auslan to young children perhaps help to change attitudes because, you know, they're being brought into it at a young age?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. When like I said, we're going to the shops and the cashier being able to sign thank you. Imagine if it's not just at the shops, it's at the doctor's surgery, when you go to the GP, the dentist, the hospital, because people are immersed in sign language from a young age and they all enter the workforce as adults and they'll still remember those signs. And so it can only lead to a more inclusive society. Dreams, we can dream big and hope we get there. We also have a partnership with Gallaudet University, which is the only liberal arts university for the deaf based out of Washington, D.C. in the US. And it's funded from the US Congress, and they also are a university, so they provide fees for students, and that's a fully inclusive university. So everyone signs, the professors, the admin staff, the bookshop, everyone can sign. It's a completely immersive environment. And I'm just absolutely gobsmacked with every time I attend Gallaudet University, just the level of access. It's a completely different feel in navigating life. And so we partner with Gallaudet University on a number of fronts. And one of those fronts is an immersion program. We're able to send 4 to 5 deaf individuals every year to have that Gallaudet experience, that immersion experience over 3 to 4 weeks. Because it's unlike that anywhere else in the world. And so that's where true inclusivity happens.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Is there anything else that Brett wanted to say?
No, I do want to wish everyone in their celebrations and happy International Day of People with Disability. It's great to see the disability community come together to showcase our diversity, our differences, and I hope the mainstream community finds different ways to connect and provide that sense of belonging for people with disability. So enjoy the celebrations throughout the day. Many opportunities like this arise with days to celebrate, such as International Day of People with Disability. We want to showcase the allies as well. So the allies of the deaf community and allies of the disability community, and to celebrate them as well. Last week, we had the Deaf Olympics in Tokyo. Deaf athletes don't participate in the mainstream Olympics. We're not part of the Paralympics, so we actually have our own Olympics, which was in Tokyo. We had 25 different sports, I think. 3,000 athletes from all over the world attended to compete with each other as elite athletes. I can't remember the number of sports off the top of my head, at least 25 sports. And Deaf Connect was a proud sponsor of the Deaf Australians that went over to compete. And we sent 98 athletes over to compete at the Tokyo Deaf Olympics. And that's how we contribute as an organisation, to ensure people have the best life they can, participate in opportunities that they couldn't do in the past. And it's great as a deaf person to find their identity, find their friends, and have those experiences they can. I participated in the 2005 Deaf Olympics. I was in the Australian water polo team. We came 5th in the world out of, and I won't tell you how many teams there were. I think there was only 5 teams, but but it was a great experience for me to connect with the international deaf community. Yeah, fantastic opportunity. It was great that we were able to provide that to 98 athletes this year round.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Thank you very much.
No,
Yes, thanks for your time.
you're welcome. You're welcome. I hope you got a small snippet that you can use on your Wednesday program out of this.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you both. And thank you, Brendan, as well.
No worries. Thanks very much for your
Fortunately, I won't be able
time.
to listen to you on radio, but I'll access the interpreted program when it's released.